Welcome, everybody, to this episode of The Monthly Blend, a monthly video podcast brought to you by Next, powered by Shulman Rogers and the Big Idea Connectpreneur community. I'm Tien Wong, founder and host of the Big Idea Connectpreneur community, which is a global community of over 25,000 investors, founders, and business leaders around the world. I'm also CEO of Opus 8, which invests in fintech, health tech, and marketing technology companies through our Phoenix Fund. And Opus 8 also helps companies and alternative investment managers raise money through our network of over 3,000 accredited high net worth private investors, angels, and family offices throughout the United States. Along with my co-host, Anthony Millen, who's the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, we are pleased to bring you this monthly video podcast, which will cover trends, information, and interesting research and tidbits, as well as fascinating interviews with game changers and newsmakers here in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore Metroplex. Anthony and I started this podcast about 14 months ago as a way to increase awareness, to break down silos, and as a mechanism to do our part in helping bring the region together and help foster innovation and entrepreneurship here. And today, we're absolutely thrilled to have a conversation with two awesome business and community leaders in the region. Both are highly regarded healthcare-focused game changers who are doing some amazing things. Today, we have Sally Allain, who is the head of Johnson & Johnson JLABS at Washington, D.C., and we also have Dr. Kurt Newman, the CEO of Children's National Hospital. I'd love to give these special guests a chance to introduce themselves more fully. So Sally, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit more about your background?
Great. And thank you both for having me and doing the work that you're doing, not only through this podcast, but your other initiatives as well. So I have been with J&J for a while, about 17 years now. I started on the immunology side in discovery, managing our internal, external partnered portfolios, working all the way to translational medicine in early clinical work. I then moved into a strategy position and with our global external innovation group and looked at some new business models, managed our larger portfolio, supporting our larger portfolio, and then started to work on a strategy project, which was a big one here at JLABS at Washington, D.C., and getting that launched with Children's National. And once the position opened, I jumped at the chance to start on the ground during construction and lead and open J&J Innovation JLABS at Washington, D.C. I grew up in this area, although I spent most of my career in California, and got my teeth cut in entrepreneurship at a startup company very early on.
Thank you so much, Sally. And now for a man who needs no introduction in the Washington, D.C. area, Dr. Kurt Newman, who is the CEO of Children's National. Kurt, why don't you give us something interesting that we don't already know about you?
Well, thank you, Tien and Anthony. It's really an honor to be part of this program, and just really love your mission of bringing us all together around common goals and looking at partnerships, how we can advance the great work that's going on here in the DMV. A little known fact, I guess, Children's National, it shouldn't be little known, has been part of Washington, D.C. for now 151 years. It was founded right after the Civil War, and we were planning to celebrate our birthday, 150th last year, but of course the pandemic got in the way of that. So we're going to have a big celebration and want everybody to celebrate with us. But it was founded with the idea that the children in this region needed a place for care, that most of the hospitals at the time and doctors were focused on adult care, and children needed a special hospital. And we remained true to that mission, and that theme has continued. And that's partly what brought Sally and I together, was to create an ecosystem, a campus that was devoted to pediatric innovation in healthcare, to support research and translation and commercialization of ideas that were focused toward children. And you don't see that anywhere else across the country, to have something that focused. So I've been at Children's National now for 34 years, and most of that as a pediatric surgeon. I came to Washington, D.C., the Children's Hospital, to become a pediatric surgeon, and I never left. I just loved the hospital, its mission, how it brought research, healthcare, the community, and advocacy, being the Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. And we take that very seriously because we need to be an advocate for children. So as we grew and my career grew to be chief of surgery, I had this incredible opportunity 10 years ago to become the CEO of Children's National. So here's the fact. It was nothing I ever pursued. It was not in my career path. So I don't have the usual things like MBA or, hospital administrator or anything like that. But I learned I learned healthcare from the ground up and have put that into practice, but then had this great opportunity to lead Children's National. And one of the first things I realized is that we'd outgrown the hospital campus. That's where our research was. And we had spun off about somewhere around 15, 20 companies from our own research. We have a top 10 children's hospital NIH funded research program. That needed space, and our clinical growth needed space. So really, this new campus at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center, which had been closed, this new campus solved two issues for us. One is we could move our own research and have a home, a campus where we could grow. And then that created space for our clinical growth. But when we looked at it, the fundamental decision we made was we didn't want to do this alone. We didn't want to put up a Children's National Research Institute, and that's all that was going to be on this campus. We wanted to find the best-in-class partners to work with us to create this ecosystem that would be focused on pediatric innovation and creativity and ideas, but was not exclusive to Children's National. And so we looked around for partners, and that's where we were introduced to Johnson & Johnson JLABS. They loved the idea from the beginning. They're a baby company. That's where they started. They had this innovation concept and loved the idea that it could be focused on children and pediatrics, as well as it's in Washington, D.C., and there wasn't a JLABS there. And with all the assets we have, the FDA, the NIH, all the great universities here. So our idea was to create this ecosystem, which also is an economic driver for this region, creating jobs, bring tax revenue in. There's nothing quite like that in the district itself. And so that's the plan we had to create this one of a kind too, because there's nothing quite like this that we know of in the United States or around the world focused on children. And so Johnson & Johnson JLABS has been a great partner. And I'll close this kind of long piece by saying we noticed that our companies that were started had to go somewhere else outside the region many times to get started. In fact, two of them went to JLABS outside the DMV. So it's been very, very rewarding now that, and Sally can talk about this, to have an opportunity for local companies to be and stay and be part of an accelerator situation like J&J and Johnson & Johnson Innovation provides at JLABS.
Well, that's great. Kurt, thank you for that background and information. And also congrats on being named the Washington Business Journal CEO of the Year last year. That's their highest honor and very well deserved. Now I'd like to turn it over to my co-host, Anthony Millen, who is a serial entrepreneur. He's a venture capitalist. He's also an awesome startup lawyer. And Anthony also is the founder of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers. And Anthony, congrats on Next being named the Startup Law Firm of the Year by Legal Week magazine recently, when you beat out some big names. So congrats, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Tien and Kurt and Sally. It's great to have you with us today. So to start off, we're going to just spend a little time learning a little bit more about the this new innovation program at Children's National Hospital. And we're also going to spend a little time learning a little bit more around JLABS. And then from there, we'll go into more kind of regional area type of discussion. as it impacts the startup ecosystem. So, Sally, I would really like to hear from you on JLABS, how you help startups succeed on their journey, kind of the whole process and method and what you've been able to do at JLABS to help these companies.
Yeah, no, thanks. Great question to start. And I'd love to highlight we're celebrating 10 years this year in 13 locations around the world with our 13th incubator location here in Washington, D.C., which was incredibly important to us, as Kurt highlighted, from a aspect of shining a light on the need for more pediatric innovation, but also an incredible location strategically with proximity to federal agencies like the FDA, the NIH, as well as the institutions, research institutions that sit around us. So for J&J Innovation, JLABS, our biggest aim is to give big company benefits to entrepreneurs and early stage companies. So how can we remove some of the challenges and bars for entrepreneurs to get started? We provide a turnkey infrastructure, so access to capital equipment, high-end specialized equipment at all of our sites. I mean, millions of dollars worth of equipment at no additional cost. We then provide operational and business teams to support front and back end needs for these companies, to take care of the day-to-day items so that they can really focus on driving their research. And then I think, wrapping around them, we provide mentorship. So they may be the expert in a disease state or a biology or a research system, but at the end of the day, at some point, they're going to need additional mentorship, whether it comes to CMC, meetings with the FDA, scale up, whatever we can do, we come in and support companies with our expertise. And then I think another really important aspect of our business model is we're no strings attached. So companies that incubate with us, we don't take IP, we don't take equity. And so companies are free to partner with whomever they would like. Obviously, we have strategic interests in the companies that we incubate. We want to make sure they're successful, and we do research collaborations. We do deals with the companies that we incubate. But we also recognize that companies need to be freely able to partner with other corporations, organizations to drive their research as well.
It's amazing. And, for these startup companies early on, the fact that they can kind of progress much further before they have to go out and try to raise these larger capital rounds just because of the access to all of this type of capital equipment really is tremendously valuable. Is there a period of time they stay with you? Like how does that part of the program work?
Yeah, we see as companies stay about 2 to 3 years with us that's about the average. Look, our portfolio now is over 750 companies that have incubated with us. We have about 350 companies that are current residents, and they are at all different stages, whether it's very early discovery companies that are thriving on early stage SBIR non-dilutive funding, all the way through companies that are in Series A, Series B's round. But if a company can expand within our site, they're doing really well, they're successful. We want to support them. So there's not a timetable for each company. We really work with companies individually. But I think the most important thing, and certainly what we're thinking about here in the district, as these companies grow and graduate, we want them to stay here. We want them to grow roots here, if not at this innovation campus in the future, thinking about the growth of Children's National Research Innovation Campus, but here locally. And I think the region has a lot for companies to tap into.
One of the things we've seen in the different discussions we've had over time with the monthly blend is this importance of trying to have companies stay in the area and grow in the area and exit in the area and plant new seeds for the next generation of companies in the area. So I think having the kind of resources that you're providing locally really has a powerful impact on that. The other thing you mentioned was you're part of a global network. And so I'd like to just understand a little bit more about the benefits of being part of this global network and how that helps companies and alumni who have been or currently part of JLABS. Yeah,
there's two easy, I think, onboarding aspects of the global network, which is, we have an ecosystem. We pull together companies electronically. We have a platform. They have access to our global investor hub. They have access to our global resource hub. So we pull in outside vendors, outside partners, legal organizations, HR organizations, so companies can tap into those resources. They also connect across the ecosystem with other JLABS companies. We've got great examples of companies that partner within our portfolio of companies and driving additional research amongst themselves. And then I think, the inherent knowledge for CEOs. So as CEOs are navigating and building their own company, having that network of other CEOs that have gone through the JLABS family and access what we can provide, they're able to make that connection, and we always like to help make those introductions. We do a big CEO summit yearly. Obviously, with COVID, that was put on pause, but we're certainly looking forward to bringing everyone back together as soon as we can.
And the last area, you mentioned the investor hub component. It's so important for early stage companies. One of the big challenges is just how do they reach investors and access and know who's interested in investing in this stage, in this space. Maybe just as a last area to just cover specifically on JLABS, would be great to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think what you hit on is really important. So we have, while J&J Innovation, we do have our own investors with JJDC, and our investor hub, our global investor hub, is powered by JJDC. It's really important that our companies have access to other investors. We're strategic investors. We oftentimes, drive and lead syndicates, but we want to make sure companies have that access to conversations for additional fundraising, early fundraising. So we work with investors, especially locally, to meet with our companies. We work with our companies so they're pitch ready to meet with investors. But I think one of the most important aspects for entrepreneurs and early stage companies is to have the relationships with the investors before they're going through a fundraising round. So we like to make those connections when we can. We hold events. Actually, I'm getting excited. We're going to have an event here in early April for our investor hub to meet with companies, but also to bring other companies outside to meet with these investors and bring them here to JLABS at Washington, D.C., really just creating this networking opportunity. And so that companies, again, have those relationships before they need to ask for financing.
Right. Well, as I was saying before, just tremendous assets and really wonderful to have JLABS in Washington, D.C. And one of the things, Kurt, you had mentioned early on is JLABS partnering as part of this new innovation campus ecosystem that you're building, and would be great to just hear, Children's National Hospital, as you mentioned, is a global leader in pediatric care, and you've been able to really continue to innovate in areas of research and operations and clinical care. Why were you so passionate about creating this new kind of innovation campus and ecosystem?
Sure. Well, thank you, Anthony. When I looked around the country, and this goes back to my time as a pediatric surgeon and chief of surgery, I saw that the hurdles and challenges for innovation for children were immense, and there wasn't much going on. And we started working with the University of Maryland College Park and their School of Engineering, for example, to try and identify solutions that were focused on children. People had this idea that the market wasn't big enough, or all sorts of different, it was too challenging regulatory wise. And I remember using adult tools to operate on children. I mean, that's just a sidelight. That hurt. And so we at Children's said, you know what, we can be a catalyst for turning that around. And with the University of Maryland College Park, we got a grant from the FDA to promote and accelerate innovation for children, particularly around devices. And it exploded in a good way. And we were able to bring many companies along, not because we were trying to own anything, but because we were trying to do the right thing. And it benefited Children's. We got top talent. We got access to new technologies and devices. Our reputation went up as being a place where there was a lot of creativity and innovation. And I mentioned some of the companies that got spun off. And we kind of reached a tipping point. Hey, if we can do this in our with our children's hospital, can we get bigger? And can we take it even bigger and broader? And I've been looking around and seeing all these great innovation districts around the country. I mean, I don't want to compare us now to Boston and Kendall Square or Cortex in St. Louis, or, all the success stories around the country. And there's also some stories but we studied that. And then we had this opportunity with when the Army was going to close the base. And we said, we can create something like that for children. We have this incredible opportunity, pediatric focus, but diseases start in childhood or even before people are born. So that was the big idea, was that we could create this on a larger scale, this ecosystem with partners, and have something that created the scale where we could really find new technologies, breakthroughs, advances, and not do it at a hospital, but create this whole campus. And that's where we thought we needed partners to do that. And JLABS was a great partner. I realized we couldn't do this alone. We got Virginia Tech to come up from Blacksburg now they have a $1 billion campus in Northern Virginia, but they now are our academic partner in that the building that we have out there, focused on brain tumor research. So, Anthony, then there's some other pieces that are really, really important. A place like that draws top talent. Doctors and researchers want to be part of something that's creative and where their ideas can be translated into something. They want to come, and nobody thought of Washington, D.C. like that. Now that's different. And this campus is located in a mixed-use development. It's got that urban vibe where young people want to live. I mean, I don't want to, alienate anybody on your podcast, but young people, I think, would rather live in kind of a hip urban environment right now than being in some suburban research park. So it creates this whole scenario of just lots and lots of stuff happening. And we have we've got a meeting center out there. It's an international center for communications where people, Sally was mentioning, we can have conferences. We want to promote those kinds of collaborations, collisions that really spark the best advances in discovery. And the great thing for us is there's this pediatric focus. Another thing I'd say is, why Washington, D.C.? And we talked about all the government agencies here and the universities and all of that. But people from outside love the diversity that is here in Washington. And Sally can tell you about a company that relocated here just for they wanted access to that kind of diverse population, real so they could be on the ground with real issues. So we've got all of these assets, and the beauty for me is that we're channeling it toward children.
Well, it's an amazing concept and vision, and I think that it's going to be one of these areas in Washington that's going to set an example around the country in terms of innovation and how different groups can come together and bring something to life like this. So it's going to be very exciting to follow the progress there.
Well, thank you, Anthony. And just for your viewers and listeners, we're just getting started. So we've got 1 million square feet that has been zoned now. It was part of the government. It was under the Army. It was never zoned. So we've gotten our zoning approved from the district. We can put up another 1 million square feet. We've got wet lab space, dry labs. We got a vivarium, all these things you mentioned before that a lot of small companies can't do on their own. But we're looking for partners to help us develop this next phases. And as Sally said, I'll change it. It's shovel ready. So it's, and we just, we're a little children's hospital. I mean, we are top 10, but, we want to find partners and people that are interested in helping us here in the DMV really put something special on the map.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for sharing that information on both JLABS and on Children's National Hospital. Now I'm going to turn it back to Tien, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about the region in general.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. So I'd like to start with Sally. Sally, you have run JLABS now for a little over 2 years. I know you're a native of the DC region, but you have spent a lot of time in other life sciences ecosystems, particularly California. Where do you see our strengths and potential opportunities in the DC region, not just at the campus that you guys are building, but just throughout the region as a whole? Because I think people will be attracted to the campus as a hub. But, if you could do a little compare and contrast, not trying to say who's better, who's not better, but, where are we strong and where do we have opportunities here?
Yeah, I'm happy to compare and contrast. Actually, I do with my colleagues all the time about this region because you become very favorable, right, of where you work. And I'm jumping up and down all the time compared to my colleagues in Boston about what is here. I think there's, if you look at just what has happened over the last year and this, I think it was over 160% increase in venture funding in this region, which says a lot. I think that's a big gap for us here. We need more VC money, and so it's nice to see that trend. I think if you look on the life sciences side, cell and gene therapy and vaccines is becoming a big strength for this region. And then so when you think of that, and you think about responding to our next and future health threats, and in our backyard here we have BARDA. We have a great collaboration and partnership with BARDA, and we're supporting and incubating companies on their strategic needs that are just too early to where they would partner. So how do we move them forward faster? I think another thing that I've been uniquely surprised about is a wealth of medical device companies in this region as well. We have a couple of companies that we're incubating here in medical devices. One, Nanogen, who's very well known in the region, company Algometrics, which was a spin out of Children's National, is under the medical device umbrella. And then also, and medical device companies are also very well supported from getting devices ready for clinical trials in this region. And then I think another area of focus, which I saw that really came out of COVID, were for digital health and telemedicine companies. So certainly a lot of digital health platform technology companies here in the region, whether that's organic or whether that has also supported, I think, in a number of organizations that work in this Northern Virginia metro region with such a strong tech background to support digital health companies. But I think that's something we're excited about, and we're watching and looking and seeing how we can support.
Oh, that's great. Kurt, would you care to respond as well, especially as with respect to your focus on pediatrics and children? Where do you see our strengths and potential opportunities in this region?
Great observation there, because I don't want to leave the impression that to be a part of our campus or part of our ecosystem, you have to be completely pediatric focused. So we have a wide aperture of interest, because we think that it's hard to know where something's going to end up, but if it's a great idea, it's probably going to have a positive impact on children. But I think we have a lot of natural assets. I think the challenge to us is to take advantage of them, because, and it's trying to maybe this whole industry has been kind of taken for granted in the DMV. And I think the work you all are doing to create these connections is so important, because one group can't do it alone. And I think so one of the biggest assets we have is there's so much here. And if we can coordinate and collaborate, I think we can really move things forward. And we'll all be really proud of what we've created here in Washington, D.C. And the DMV can be seen as, on a equal footing with Boston or San Francisco or San Diego, some of the other areas that naturally come to mind. So I'm really bullish and optimistic. I think Sally hit on something too with the pandemic, is that people now are understanding the value of research and innovation in healthcare, and we can't go to sleep again on that. And whether it's infectious diseases or cancer, and all the opportunities with the moonshot now, but seeing what was done in terms just with vaccines in such a short time based on science. So I think it's the success here is for us to deliver, because we've got it all. And I think taking this approach that we've taken on this campus of being open, collaborative, not competitive, although I do like to be number one, I'll admit that, but to create that kind of atmosphere is creates the best science and innovation. And so I think we can move that forward. I think alternatively, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of markets and areas that are totally focused now on biohealth and innovation, and they're moving forward, and they've got planning, and they come together, and they are very strategic about it. It's a little bit fractured here, as you all know, and we're sitting in 3 different states or 2 states in a district. We got to get over that and find ways to really work together to move things forward. And then I think we can advance rapidly.
Yeah, no, very, very great comment. Thank you for that. And I know you touched on in the last segment, you touched on the need to attract awesome and young and energetic talent to the region. You talked about creating a hip, exciting, sort of diverse type of location. And Sally, you talked to your 12 other colleagues heading up their various JLABS regions. What do you think, Sally, we can do, or that we have to do to attract not just companies, but also to attract and retain talent and capital here? Like, what strategy and resources do you think we need?
Yeah, I actually, I think if you look at the region, we know that we have such a huge talent pool of advanced degree individuals across this region, right? We lead the nation in that. I think what we need too is additional talent to support companies. So how can I know there are organizations like the Maryland Tech Council and Virginia Bio that we partner with and really try and pull in additional talent to support growing companies within the region. I think access to capital is huge, a big need. So how do we work together? I've talked to a number of individuals across this region. Why aren't we partnering to do a VC showcase? Why aren't we pulling in more VCs from outside this region to showcase the on the ground what is here? How can we do that together? I think Kurt hit on it. We need to build more partnerships and consortiums and work as groups to move the needle forward on some opportunities rather than be fractured. But Tien, I think some of the work that you're doing, I think is really fantastic, and bringing groups together, whether it's on the tech and cyber side now with life sciences and healthcare. There's a big crossover, I think, where sectors and industries can learn from one another and support one another as well.
Thank you for that. We have time for a couple more questions. I think one is obviously ESG and DE&I, and I'd like to applaud JLABS. You have a third of your portfolio, from what we can tell, is women-led, 30% minority-led. How are you expanding that focus on, DEI over at JLABS? And I'd also like to ask Kurt, how are you at Children's promoting ESG and DEI? So, Sally, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so a major factor for us is diversity in health and leadership. It's a part of who we are. We talk about it daily. We're tracking it. We need to shine a light on those numbers and change the conversation. So we're being pretty loud and bold about it. I think it's incredibly important that the companies that are driving science and technology solutions for our patients are representative of those solutions and science that's needed. So yes, our portfolio of CEOs, over 30% are women, and additional 30 are diverse CEOs. So we're supporting companies too, who, when they think about the patients that they're serving, we're asking them to start thinking a bit more broadly. If their science or technology isn't serving specific patient population. So we are driving those questions with our companies as well.
Yeah, I know you guys, and Kurt, you also are going the extra mile, because we all know that STEM is not exactly the first choice. I have two daughters, for young ladies and young women out there, and also finding minorities who are struggling to survive, generally speaking, to get into positions of hard sciences like you guys are supporting. So, Kurt, how about Children's in terms of your initiatives on ESG and DE&I?
Well, Tien, thank you. When I think about this population we serve and the children we serve, and over half the kids we take care of are on Medicaid, which is a signal for the issues that they and their families are facing. And I look at the statistics and see that here we are in the nation's capital, and we have a very high, totally out of range infant and maternal mortality rate, for example. That's embarrassing, in a developed country like us, and that's right here at home. So we have been on a journey to examine ourselves as a children's hospital, and promoting and thinking through issues of racial justice and diversity. We're not there, but we've done a lot of introspection. Is the care we're delivering, are there issues? Are we doing things where there are issues around equity? And we're that's new for us, really, to think through. And to your point, trying to get further upstream of the young people going into sciences and medicine, and creating programs for them to access, and then getting into the schools and trying to help with that. But I would say we've made some advances. Our pediatric internship class, we have one of the largest ones in the country. We started a few years ago. It was 15% underrepresented minorities. I'm proud to say we lead the country now at 50%. it was intentional, and it takes a lot of work. But a lot of our kids and families want to see a representation of doctors and nurses and scientists that reflect themselves as role models. And so we've just got to do this across the board. But we have those values, and we share those values. On the ESG side of it, we're starting to think about that as how can we be a responsible, we're nonprofit, but how can we be a responsible corporate citizen and look at our energy usage, or look at how we're looking at food. Well, one of the features on the campus, and this, was probably the most valuable piece of the property out there, was a 1,000-space parking garage. In Washington, that's and I also want to say the Army has just been fantastic. They essentially gave us the land to use for public health because it had always been used for that, going back to the founding of Walter Reed. So we have this parking garage, and we decided to put, and it's the largest solar array in the District of Columbia, on the top of this park. And the power generated goes back to the grid to serve some of the families in the neighborhoods there. So we're learning, and we want to be responsible. But what I've learned also is that, again, back to young people and smart people, they want to be part of an organization that has those kind of values. So there's a lot more to do.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Kurt. Thank you. We're almost out of time. I have one final question. So we have a lot of listeners and viewers who are entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, academics, and so on. How can they get involved with you guys? Kurt, how can they get involved with Children's? How can they learn more?
Well, happy to have them donate. We're going into a campaign. I got to be a fundraiser.
Absolutely.
We're a nonprofit, and we do this. We're not making money off of any of this. But I think one great way is to take, when the pandemic slows down a little bit and we can have tours and visitors. Sally and I are always open to, if we're not able to, have our teams give people a tour. I think seeing is believing, and kicking the tires and kind of seeing up close and personal what's happening, and how these researchers are, whether they're in a JLABS company or Children's National Research Institute or Virginia Tech Institute, you can just feel the collisions happening and great ideas coming forward.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. And Sally, how about you? How can people get involved with what you're doing over at JLABS?
Yeah, so I'm here actually on the side in my office at JLABS, and we opened for business last year. So that you can find more information about us at jnjinnovation.com. If you're interested in incubating or even just having a conversation, there's an application process. It's non-confidential. Ping me on LinkedIn. We can get connected. And we also do what we call coffee meet with campaigns. So just want to have a conversation of what you're working on and how we might be able to support your company. Look for those as well.
Well, that's great. I'd like to thank both of you for joining us. You guys are doing some amazingly inspirational things to change the world. And I'd like to turn it over to my co-host, Anthony, who can close us out.
Great. Thank you, Tien. And a big thank you to Sally Allain and Dr. Kurt Newman for joining us today and sharing a lot of what's happening in terms of innovation and vision in life sciences through both of their organizations. We thank you for your leadership in the area. And again, thank you so much for joining us on today's Monthly Blend.
Thanks for having us, Anthony. Thanks, Tien.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.